Welcome. I would like to welcome you to the program tonight on solar policy in Belmont, and I'd like to welcome Karl Rabago to our program. Karl is the executive director of the Pace Law School's Energy and Climate Center. Karl has 25 years of experience in the electric utility industry, working for power producers, distribution companies, and as a regulator and policymaker. Karl's able to appear here tonight because he's on his way to deliver the keynote address at the Northeast Sustainable Energy Conference in Boston. While Karl was a vice president of Austin Energy in Austin, Texas, he spearheaded the development of the innovative value of solar rate structure for fairly compensating utilities and solar hosts for solar generation while not burdening other utility customers. Karl was Director of Regulatory Affairs at AES, which is a $17 billion international energy producer operating in 21 countries. And Karl has served as Commissioner with the Texas Public Utilities Commission, as well as Deputy Assistant Secretary of Energy for Utility Technology in the U.S. Department of Energy. So welcome, Karl.
Thanks, Roger. It's great to be here.
Let's get right into it.
Sure.
Solar is growing rapidly across the country. And locally, you can see solar panels powering electric lights and traffic lights and roadside signs and on our neighbors' roofs. And if you go to the REI in Natick, you'll see solar panels covering their parking lot. If you go to Iggy's Bakery in Cambridge, they have a very interesting solar array. How come there's such a rapid adoption of solar in Massachusetts and beyond?
There's a whole bunch of reasons. If you think about the relatively short history of solar, we really developed solar cells, those little semiconductor cells, look kind of glassy and shiny, that absorb sunlight and convert it directly into electricity. We really just got serious about those in the 1950s. So we're talking about something that's only a half century old, but it's popular today because the costs are falling, and they're real low, and they're very affordable in a wide range of applications. And it's one of those amazing technologies like computers and cell phones where the more we make, the cheaper they get. So we're really enjoying this rapid acceleration in performance and rapid decline in cost. I made a list of a whole bunch of other reasons because I want to make sure that I cover them. Like I said, people are also finding more and more cost-effective ways to use it. My favorite is to power the lights for school crossings, because you don't want to leave something as valuable as our children to the grid that could get knocked down. At least with solar power and a little battery there, you know those lights are going to be protecting our children. Solar goes in when, how, and in the size we need it. We call that scalable. But you can always get the right size solar solution for your need. That's very different than the big giant coal plants and nuclear power plants, and makes it a more valuable resource. It has no moving parts, or very few. Sometimes you can choose to have it tilt to follow the sun. Most systems on rooftops just stay still. So it's all solid state electronics, nothing to wear out and break like there is for so many other power sources. It reduces our dependency on coal and gas, huge environmental benefits associated with that, but it also reduces wear and tear on the power plants that we've already invested in, and the transmission systems, and the distribution systems, and the transformers, and all the other parts of the system. So when a customer generates a little of their electricity, it's like they're reducing their demand, and that reduces wear and tear all the way up the system for savings for everybody who's connected to that utility. It gives customers control over their energy use, like an investment in energy efficiency. It's always good. These bills are important to us, and if we can manage them better, that's valuable to customers. It has a good match with expensive summer peak periods. When the demand and the price for electricity goes really high, that's when solar is doing its best, because the same thing that causes those prices causes the solar cells to generate electricity. I mentioned before, no pollution. That means no contribution to global warming. That's really, really getting increasingly valuable. It's a fantastic job creator. Putting solar on a roof is a labor-intensive process, and it works better if the crews are right there in the community. So it creates lots of jobs because it's solving a local power need. It keeps the money that we spend on our energy local and in our community, and economic development experts will tell you there's a multiplier effect. Rule number one in economic development: if you want to keep your money, you don't give it all away. So if you can keep your money to meet your energy needs in your community, it grows in your community and makes your community stronger. And then finally, I think increasing numbers of customers recognize it's the right thing to do. And a whole bunch of customers here in Belmont and other places have said, I'm going to take some of my personal wealth, some of my personal investment, I'm going to take on the personal obligation to participate in moving our electricity system to a clean, sustainable, solar-based system, or at least increasingly solar system. So we get actual private individual customers helping do what otherwise the utility would have to invest in. That's a good partnership for the community. So that's a quick list.
That's great. I mean, clearly solar has a lot of benefits, but it presents challenges for utilities. How have utilities been responding to the growth of solar?
Right. Solar is challenging if you're a utility executive with your mind firmly fixed in the 1950s, right? I mean, that we have, and let's not take one thing away from the electric utility industry. Over the last 100 years, over most of the last century, they did remarkable and heroic things to give us access to this extremely great energy source, electricity. Look at how important and how valuable it is in our daily lives. It's true, you cannot live a modern life without electricity. And utilities across the country are responsible for getting it for us. But they did it using basically a dumb one-way electron delivery system. Large central station power plants, transmission lines down through distribution lines down to individual customers. For us, it was like drinking out of a fire hose. There's a lot of spillage along the way. Now, with this revolution in energy efficiency, distributed solar technology, we have an opportunity to have generation occur at the other end. But these are systems that customers install. These are things that customers do. And that's threatening and frightening to utility people. They're saying, we know how to control that old system, but we don't know what to do with this new system. So some utilities have reacted by saying that it's even a mortal threat to their very existence. It is if they don't change their business model. They say it's technically challenging. It is if they don't use modern technology to address the problems. They say that it causes problems with other customers who don't use solar. It will if they don't figure out ways that all customers get to participate in solar as a community, as individual customers, as renters, as people who live in multifamily dwellings. There are solutions to all these problems, but if you insist on keeping your eyes firmly in the past, solar, increasing customer control over energy use, all of these are challenges to that old business model, and it's going to compel some change.
So Belmont has lagged neighboring communities in installing residential solar. How has Belmont Light, our local utility, been responding to residents who want to install solar on their homes?
Right, so we get down to the sort of from the general, how does the utility react? And by the way, I should say, I characterized how utilities react if they want to stick with the old system and want to resist. There's some fantastic examples going around the country of utilities who are reaching out and partnering with their solar customers and with their solar communities of interest to change the way they do business and to keep the utility profitable, even to open up new lines of profitability. Now with a utility like Belmont, it's not about profitability, right? It's a community solar system, it's a municipal. So, and that just like Austin Energy, where I worked before. So their goal should be keeping costs lower. If they can take advantage of solar to help keep costs lower overall, then they should find ways to do it. Unfortunately, the reason I'm here, the reason I've responded is because I got involved in conversations with some citizens in Belmont who cared about the fact that the light company was basically proposing some pretty draconian attacks on solar, some rate and regulatory changes that would impose new charges and reduce the value that a customer could receive by engaging in solar. And I got to tell you, these are outlier actions. Right? These are outliers within the community, the hundreds of municipal utilities right here in the state of Massachusetts. Only less than a handful are taking the course of action that Belmont is taking. Of all the 50 states, 44 have net metering policies like Belmont has today, and in many of those have resisted changes to try to gut the value that solar gets. I was struggling with this, Roger, and I was trying to figure out if I could come up with an analogy that didn't sound as sort of complicated as solar and utility rates, which is the kind of complication I revel in, but I've been to enough cocktail parties and other things to know that most people find it boring. So, so let me see if I can find, I wanted to try just a simple analogy. This is what's going on in Belmont. This is what's proposed. Belmont secured for itself the only grocery store in town. It sells tomatoes. It sells cheap generic tomatoes. They're kind of pinkish and kind of chalky tasting, but they're all the same size and they stay good on the shelf and they're reasonably priced, and you can always find them at the Belmont Light grocery store. Some of you have started reading on this internet thing that homegrown tomatoes can be healthy. People have put out instructions for very simple ways to grow your own tomatoes successfully and how to do it without pesticides and to get a good crop so that in the middle of summer you can bite into one of those juicy, red, flavorful tomatoes. Hearing about this, the Belmont Light grocery store has said, not only are we going to continue to charge you every time you do still come in for a tomato, because you always have to pay for tomatoes if you want them from us, and not only is the price of that tomato going to reflect the cost of the store and the tomatoes, by the way, the tomatoes is a small price, the store and the salaries to the CEO and the trucks to deliver the tomatoes to the store and all those things, but what they're proposing now is to send you a bill for the tomatoes you didn't buy. Not exactly for tomatoes, but because they have a store there for tomatoes that you don't buy. And they say they're entitled to have the entire store paid for, and they're trying to make it so that you don't have an economic incentive, you don't have a health incentive, you don't have a reason to grow your own tomatoes. And all those reasons you thought were really good, and all those things you thought about taking care of your kids, and being healthy, and being responsible, and getting control of your grocery bill, all of that, the Belmont grocery store has said, we're responding by making it so it doesn't work for you. That's really what's going on here. And like I said, it's not that you won't have to pay the cost of being able to go to the store. And you're going to have a hard time growing tomatoes in the winter. Belmont's going to be there for you, and they're going to charge you the full price of that. But if you dare try to take care of your own tomato appetite, they're sending you a bill. That's the proposal. They're creating new charges and reducing the value of your homegrown electricity so that hopefully you won't try to do it anymore.
Do you have any thoughts or recommendations about how Belmont could move forward on the adoption of solar?
Not that way, right?
Okay.
You know, this is a municipal utility. The very reason for public power is so that it can be close to its customers. I believe so strongly in the core ethic of public power. I got a taste of this at Austin Energy. It's remarkable. I mean, there's nothing like a utility where if you want to talk to the chairman of the board, you just walk downtown to City Hall and you can talk to him or her, you know? That's the way it should work. And they should have the best interests of the community in mind. And right now, in Belmont, probably a relatively few customers who are getting up and growing their own tomatoes. But there's a lot more that want to. There's a lot more that want to figure out how to do it. So Belmont, like the tomato thing, the light company should figure out ways to meet this customer demand. And they should say things, well, if you can't afford to put it on your own roof, or you live in a multifamily dwelling, they should explore what utilities across the country are exploring, which is community solar projects, where the cost is lower and multiple customers can participate in it. They should explore other ways to develop and grow the solar industry. Have the idea of solar installers living and working in this community and making a living there. And more than anything, what they need to do is back all their decisions up with facts. One of the frightening things that I've seen in the proposals from Belmont, for example, is these charges are based on a hypothetical customer who produces a hypothetical amount of solar energy, and then they construct a charge that's very real. That's not how it's supposed to work in the utility business. If a solar customer costs more, a cost of service study should show it, and they should conduct that cost of service study. And if they want to find the right value to compensate that customer for their solar production, they should do the study to determine it. The joke that I use is that, you know, in God we trust. but everyone else should bring data. And what's been missing from the Belmont proposal so far, there's a lot of calculations, there's a lot of numbers, but there's no data about what solar's worth and what it costs and what benefits it brings. That'd be a really good place to start.
Are there any studies that have been done on the
More and
value
more
of
every day.
solar?
Yeah, more and more every single day. I personally have been involved in studies in Austin, in Minnesota, in North Carolina, and several other places, and Colorado. I can tell you that the most recent one, days old, in Maine, which is just a short drive from here. The value of solar study that just came out, it was established by the legislature of the state of Maine. It was reviewed by the Public Service Commission and Public Utility Commission of Maine, came out, and it has some pretty remarkable numbers. When you fully account for all the avoided costs that are associated with electricity, distribution, transmission, and by the way, there are real values there, and the value of avoided environmental impacts, and you do so over the 25-year life of a solar panel, each one of those kilowatt hours of electricity from a solar generator is worth about 33 cents. Compare that to paying 18 cents for electricity today as a residential customer of Belmont.
So you're saying that a kilowatt of electricity that's generated from a solar panel could actually be worth more than the retail price
You're
that
going
customers...
exactly the right direction. Yes, it's worth more, and if the utility can pay less than that 33 cents, in fact, if they can pay just 18 cents, if they just gave you retail value for that, they would be making, let's do my math, 15 cents of extra value for all the other ratepayers that they could bring into the system. And you know what that spells over 25 years? That's called rate reduction. That means that your community is not addicted to natural gas prices that are certain to go back up. Your community is not addicted to polluting sources that are increasingly contributing to global climate change. Your community is not continuously addicted to a giant system that can be terrorized by increasing hurricanes and storms. Your system is strong and local and invested in by the users. That's why that value is 15 cents higher than the cost itself.
Do you have any other examples for utilities around the country that have taken a more positive view of residential solar and actions that they've taken?
Well, I mean, many utilities have done various things. Xcel Energy is doing some fantastic stuff with community solar in Colorado. Third parties, bringing third-party providers to come work with Xcel in Minnesota and Minnesota Power in Minnesota has led to hundreds of megawatts of community solar projects going on.
Before we go further, can you, the viewers may not understand what community solar is. Can you just describe what that is?
Yes, good. Thank you for doing that, because I kind of get into lingo. So some of us, you could maybe have a good roof without a tree that shades your roof. You could put solar on. You might have the money to do it. Put on a big enough system. You may either borrow, lease, take out a home equity loan. Some customers live in multifamily places, or they have beautiful trees shading their roof. Their house is not ideal for solar. So the idea is that we basically have a virtual rooftop for multiple customers. Now, solar is a high fixed cost business. So if you could do a solar installation that was 10 homes big or 20 homes big, it's going to be cheaper than trying to do 20 different separate installations. So you actually can achieve some cost savings. Plus, if the utility will look to the places in its grid where it has congestion and high costs because of the way the system is configured, that solar can actually add extra special value to reducing grid costs and save on transformers and poles and wires and recircuiting and things like that. So basically, it's an idea that works where you might say shade a parking lot outside, here by the train station, right? That municipal parking lot. You put up shaded covers, and so it's more comfortable in the summer, and you make some electricity. And you as an individual customer could buy in as a subscriber to a share of that. What's really exciting is that you can buy in at a smaller level. So for example, low income customers who are just have, a tighter household budget, can buy smaller amounts but still take advantage of the fact that once you buy into solar, the price never changes. I mean, can you imagine an electricity bill that you knew was going to be flat for 25 years? No. That's why people buy solar, right? And some of our customers who have the highest strain on their household budgets would really appreciate getting a flat electric bill, or at least some part of their electric bill being flat for years to come. That's something they can, that's electricity that they not only need to live, but that they can live with.
That's great. So it sounds like that there are lots of ways that we could improve the environment for residents in Belmont in order to be able to adopt solar. And this has really just been fascinating. So I'd like to thank you for coming and giving us your expertise and your time. And I'd like to thank the audience for joining us tonight. And I hope you found that this was very illuminating. And,
there you go.
I guess I'd like to end by just saying that we should all let the sun shine in.
Thank you, Roger.
Thank you.
Thank you.